When I was growing up, I had a football coach who, after a bad loss, would literally burn the game tape in front of us to symbolize putting it behind us. It's over. It's happened. The Edmonton Oilers might want to pull a page out of Coach Jones's book.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my 10th season doing digital hockey content, my third as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. On today's show, we're going to walk through that burn the tape 6-2 loss to the Penguins. We will start out breaking down what went so wrong in those fatal 37 seconds. Well, I'm kind of worried about the Ekholm-Bouchard pair big picture, what that game getting away from the Oilers means and why it got away so fast. In our second segment, we'll dive into whether or not the Oilers are power play merchants, and I'll dissect their even strength scoring issues. And then to round out this episode, Stuart Skinner and Brett Kulak return to Edmonton as members of the Penguins. We'll talk a little bit about that Tristan Jarry and Stuart Skinner swap. Brett Kulak will get a mention in there as well. But to start out, anytime you lose a game like that, it's very important you put it behind you. And I know there are two schools of thought, and this is one of the great questions of our time. Do you want to go with negative reinforcement, or do you want to go with positive reinforcement? Do you want to rub their nose in the fact they got smoked, and do you want to run the tape with the laser pointer and say, well, that's your guy, and you're over here, so what are you supposed to do? And that is about as bad a 37 seconds as you are going to see played in the National Hockey League by professional hockey players. If those three goals happened when I was playing EASHL with my friends and we were on defense, I would be pissed at them, how bad some of that is, just from a schematic defensive standpoint. And so much of the game today is decided in transition. You have heard me talk about this ad nauseum over the last few weeks as we're really getting into the dog days of the season. And the Oilers lineup is starting to come into focus, in particular Jake Wallman coming back from injury. We're starting to get an idea of what the six defensemen come playoff time are going to look like. And transition play ultimately defines so many of our opportunities within the game today, because that's where the most dangerous offense usually comes from. Now, traditionally speaking, when I say dangerous offense, you're thinking about shots from the slot and in closer to the net front, 10 to 15 feet away, where you have a dead-on look at the net, and if you get the goalie leaning a little bit, you're scoring. In today's game, I would dare assert that cross-seam pass in a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2 is more dangerous because you are introducing more variables to the given play. And the first goal, the first Mantha goal at 2:20, it is a beautiful sequence. And I give a lot of credit to the Penguins. I was talking with Hunter Hodes of Locked On Penguins after the game ended. We were texting back and forth, and I was really impressed with Pittsburgh. And yeah, you give Pittsburgh credit for playing a good game. That's a good team. They're in second place in the Metropolitan Division right now. They have a real chance to maybe make some noise. Dare I say, catch Carolina if they continue playing the way they are. But that was a team that came out with an agenda. And again, Calgary, like the Devils earlier in the week, Pittsburgh, like the Devils earlier in the week, they played Calgary last night. This is a team on the second half of a back-to-back, tired legs, and Pittsburgh came out of the gate hot. Pittsburgh came out and put boots to butts, to paraphrase The Rock. And I was really disappointed on the second one. The first Mantha goal, that's a great pass. It gets through Bouchard and Ekholm. Both of them are in the center lane. They're trying to take away the middle lane pass, and it gets through both of them. Sometimes that's going to happen, and the puck hits Mantha exactly on the blade of his stick, and Tristan Jarry doesn't really have a play. He can't get over. He gets beat. It happens. Sometimes you're just not going to be in the right place at the right time. I can live with that. The second goal frustrates me a lot more. The second Mantha goal is a failure on multiple levels. So the Oilers have recovered the puck. They're going the other way in transition. They gain the offensive zone, and they try to pass it through the middle. There's a lot of traffic, and that puck gets stopped. And that's the danger and the value of the pass high in the offensive zone. Generally, when we gain the offensive zone, our goal is to get the puck all the way down. We want it below the goal line so the players behind us that are trailing the play can catch up. They can get to the offensive zone, and we can get to something resembling our structure, and then we can try and look for plays to make. But one of the disadvantages of that, when you get the puck in deep, the defensive team can establish and set up defensively where they would like to be. So the recourse is we need to make passes high in the offensive zone. And that's where possession is at its most sensitive, because if you make a mistake, the defending team can spring and go back the other way. And because you've got guys up the ice, you're going to be the ones that get caught flat-footed, need to turn around and go back up ice as fast as you can to try and break up the play. And this is where Ekholm and Bouchard get caught. Bouchard is on the far side, the right side. He is driving towards the net. He's looking to receive that cross-seam pass close to the bottom of the right circle. The puck doesn't get there. Okay, so that leaves Ekholm by himself on an island. And I don't know how familiar you, dear listener or watcher of Locked On Oilers, are with the game of Anthony Mantha, but as big as he is an awfully fast skater. That trait has always been there, dating back to his time in Detroit, where I thought he was always a little underutilized. We've seen him bounce around a number of teams. He's got a very interesting skill set, the type of high ceiling, low floor player we've seen the Oilers throw darts at in free agency the last couple of years. And Mantha's been really good for the Penguins this year. And that play, Mattias Ekholm just gets burned. It is a race to that puck, and Mantha gets around him. Ekholm simply does not have the foot speed to cut off that angle and try and force Mantha to pivot off to the outside. Mantha goes around him. So we've conceded 2 goals in 12 seconds. 2 in 12 seconds. That at 2-0, you have a real chance. At 2-0, you could say to yourself, okay, we can still do this. Even as bad as the Oilers have been this year when they don't score first, I have it written down somewhere in my notes. Excuse me if you hear the turning of pages. I want to say they've lost 21. Yeah, the Oilers have lost 21 of 25 this year when the other team scores first. That's something worth keeping an eye on, and I think it speaks to what we're going to talk about in the second segment, the struggles of this team at even strength. And I know there was a lot more to this game than just those 3 Pittsburgh goals. You got a Wallman goal, you got a Savoy goal. It's nice to see Savoy continuing to get playing time and continuing to accumulate stats. That's going to matter down the line when we're talking about his confidence and what he can be. But this game is over in the first 10 minutes. At 3-0, the Oilers this year simply do not have the facilities to mount that type of comeback. And it's ironic. I remember last year, when the Penguins came to Edmonton, they got off to a very fast start as well, and they got out to a big lead. And the Oilers last year, they had a lot more juice when it came to, okay, we're down a few goals. Let's get going here. Let's run Connor with Leon. And yes, Leon back in the lineup after missing 3 games, visiting, taking care of family stuff in Germany. Wasn't sure if he was going to make it back in time to play in this game. Ultimately chose to. Wasn't in morning skate. Didn't get a practice in after being away from the team for a week. So he definitely looked like he hadn't played hockey in a week. He's still Leon Draisaitl, but it's going to take him a couple days to get ramped back up. I imagine he'll get in a good practice ahead of their game Saturday night against the Capitals. But this is an Oilers team that simply doesn't have the same offensive juice, in particular at 5-on-5, and they have largely been sustained by their power play. And the last point I wanted to make in our opening segment before we take that break, I just don't love the way the Oilers played down 3-4-0. Generally speaking, 3-1, then 4-1. I like to see a team, even when they're down a lot, I want to see you try stuff. Shake up the lines. I want to see someone get in a fight. Show me this game is not over. And some of that is performative. Some of that is about energy and momentum. But you get a good penalty kill. You get a fight. You get a good shot on goal, a dangerous scoring chance. You move your feet. You work a cycle. You draw a power play. There are little things you can do to try and build back into a game. And I'm not saying the Oilers were going to come back even down 3-1, 4-1. But it would have been nice for them to get in the game. A lot more dangerous offense, a lot of empty calorie stuff, a lot of shots from the perimeter and the point. And to Pittsburgh's credit, they did a great job mucking this game up. And we're going to talk about that more in our second segment coming up after this, where we're going to dive into those Oilers' even strength scoring issues and why I think this is more than just noise at this point. It's championship weekend in the NFL. FanDuel's been in playoff mode for weeks. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the FanDuel app. Every game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bet you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. This weekend, we've got two pretty good games, in all honesty. I know Jared Stidham's starting for the Broncos. The Patriots are modest 5.5-point favorites on the road, which is a little bit crazy. I lied. That line has moved since the last time I looked. The Patriots are now 4.5-point home favorites. And then the night game, the Rams up at Seattle, third time this year where the Rams are 2.5-point underdogs on the road. Make your picks, apply your profit boost, hunt for bigger payouts, and enjoy the playoffs. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Thank you so much to everybody that is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers, making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. You need to check out the Everydayer Club. We've picked 2 duds so far, but I've been in the Everydayer Discord server during the last 2 games, and my plan is to continue to be in there on games Monday to Fridays and on the weekends if I can manage, and pop in at random points during the day to kind of build a little bit more of a connection, get an understanding of what type of stuff you guys are looking for, what type of questions, episodes, just get a little bit more out of the listener host experience, because I know there are questions out there. I spend way too much of my time thinking about this stuff anyway. I want to know what you guys are thinking about, because one of the beautiful things about hockey, most of us watch it in very different ways from each other because of our experiences from playing, watching, etc., reading, listening, etc. So it really creates very different schools of thoughts. But real quick, moment of zen, Savoy, 9th goal. Good to see Leon back. You hope everything's okay. I imagine at some point we'll find out what's going on, but you keep that at arm's length. You give a guy his privacy while he's working through it. It was good to see him back in the lineup. It was good to see Stu and Brett Kulak get their moment during the first TV timeout. It's important. Those types of little gestures, they reflect well on your organization. We'll talk more about that in our final segment. So I think I'm ready to call the Oilers power play merchants. The underlying numbers at even strength aren't particularly impressive. The power play is sublime. It is the best power play in the NHL. Their record when they score in games on the power play versus when they don't, you look at the difference in this team's energy and just their raw math, and it becomes a real challenge to see how the Oilers are going to get where they want to if they're going to continue to struggle like this at 5-on-5. And the reason we emphasize 5-on-5 play so much this year, the reason we emphasize 5-on-5 play so much and why it's so crucial, I'm going to walk you through the math of calculating this because I wanted to fact check the Google search I got. So if you think about it, we have the Oilers averaging 2.76 power plays per game. So we're going to say 3. Okay. We're going to round up and we're going to say the Oilers get 3 power play opportunities per game. Those are, on average, for the most part, going to be of the 2-minute variety. You'll get your occasional double minor, you'll get the occasional boarding major, etc. But for the most part, they're going to be 2s. So we'll say 6 minutes of power play time, and then the other team is going to get somewhere between 2.5 or 3. So we'll round up. So we'll say there's about 12 minutes of special teams time in a given game, right? Okay. So 12 divided by 60, that gives you 80. That means 80% of the game is spent at even strength, and that becomes how we evaluate teams. And we generally know, at least it's been the case in the past, and over time it's gotten less stark, the difference, but we know generally as the regular season goes along, fewer penalties get called because referees are more inclined to let things go. Usually We come into a new season and there are points of emphasis from the league office of we want you guys to call this more, this a little bit less. And as the season wears along, the referees kind of fall back into their old habits, their old routines, and they get back to generally what the game is. And although there's a prevailing sentiment that we see fewer power plays called in the postseason to the regular season, Dom Luszczyszyn of The Athletic did a story about this, I want to say 2 years ago, and showed the disparity is very minimal. We're talking about fractional differences, regular season versus postseason. So I don't think that's that much of a deal, but you think about it in the context of 80% of the game, and you are losing that 80% of the game. We are putting such an outsized value on that other 20% that if we don't nail that 20%, if our power play and our penalty kill are not lights out, we don't have a path to victory. That has so many trickle-down effects. So let me run you through some of the numbers here in regards to the Oilers power play. So this year, the Oilers are 17-15 overall. I didn't split them between regulation and overtime losses. 17-15 when they score on the power play. They are 7-11 in games where they don't score a power play goal. They have the highest share of all their goals from the power play. 27% of the goals the Oilers have scored this year have come on the man advantage. That is the highest share of any team in the entire NHL. This is a team that generates 48% of the scoring chances that has 48% of the goals at even strength. So like we said, 80% of the game, 48% of the goals in that time. And yes, they have the number one power play in the NHL, but they don't generate a lot of power play opportunities for themselves. At 2.76, they're 23rd in the NHL in power play opportunities overall. And that has real trickle-down effects. So number one, when we are putting such an outsized importance on special teams, and don't get me wrong, power plays, you score at about twice as high a rate. You score about 20% of your shot attempts as opposed to the 10 or so you get on even strength attempts. So there's a real intrinsic value in emphasizing your power play. The problem is it freezes out parts of your lineup. It limits the stakes the rest of your lineup has, and it puts more of a responsibility on your best players, both on the special team side of things and at even strength. And that's why this year in particular, it's noticeable how much more of a disparity there is between the top six and the bottom six. And it means more minutes for your big guns. And yes, Connor and Leon have been on the power play at times, on the penalty kill at times this year. I'm not the biggest fan of it. And the workload is serious. McDavid is playing 22.57 per game. That's the most he's ever played in a game, average basis on a season. Ekholm-Bouchard, 24.39. That's the most minutes he's ever played on an average basis in a season. Zach Hyman is at 20.09. That's the most minutes per game he's ever played in a season. And Leon's about 20 seconds short of his career high in a season. He's at 22.34, excuse me, is Draisaitl's career high, and he's at 22.05. So we're talking about a serious uptick in the workload. And then when you dive into it further at even strength, the Oilers have real issues. Connor and Leon together going into tonight against Pittsburgh have only outscored opponents 15-14 when they play together. That's supposed to be, okay, we're down a goal, we need one. And look, the underlyings are still decent. They're still 57, 58% of the expected goals, the high danger chances. But we know defenses evolve, goalies evolve. Leon loses his shooting touch a little bit. And that's not to say it won't come back, but you go through a cold streak as a shooter. You stop shooting as much. You become more pass first. And I definitely would say over the last month, while Connor's been nuclear, Leon's been a bit more passive. There's been a lot more of those looks for that cross-seam pass, trying to get it across the center lane to a Kapanen, to a Podkolzin, to a Roslovic, whoever happens to be on the right side of him, opposite Podkolzin. But when the even strength numbers are this ugly, that tells me you have real core issues with your team. And it's layered. It's nuanced. We talked about it a little bit the other day as far as transition play. Do we go from defense offense enough? Do we get enough transition offense? Or are we dying and having a lot of empty possessions? And when only 3 of your skaters can create zone entries on their own, the vast majority of this team is relegated to dumping the puck in, trying to win a puck battle, trying to set up. And at that point, you've already exerted 35 seconds a minute of effort, and you can't stay out there that long. You're going to settle for that Evan Bouchard point shot, that Darnell Nurse point shot. And when you're down multiple goals, Having to string together 15 passes on a forecheck to score a goal, that's not efficient. If we need to score 4 goals and each of them require 15, 20 consecutive successful passes, we're talking about 100 plus passes needing to be executed successfully. And that's just not going to happen in the NHL. It's not. And the Oilers need to find ways to get to their transition game more. And when you're down 3-0, the way they were 3-1, 4-1, the other team isn't going to take chances in the offensive zone. They are going to let you try and come back fast, and Pittsburgh's just going to clog up the middle. Skate into the 1-3-1, try and get around us, do your best, and you have to dump it past. You have to go get them. And it takes 40 seconds just to get the puck back. It has real consequences, and we are seeing the consequences of the Oilers lacking speed to create transition offense, the complementary wingers, maybe I would say, to round out this group the way they have had in years past. And frankly, the defense just hasn't been as on point. It hasn't been as crisp as it's been in years past, and it's becoming a real concern. Now, we are going to take our second and final break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we'll dive a little bit into the Stuart Skinner-Tristan Jarry binary and pay a little tribute to Brett Kulak as well, right after this quick break. Thank you so much to everybody that is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers, making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. And I appreciate you. If you're spending your day, some part of your Friday, you're looking forward to the weekend, and you want to listen to me talk about the Oilers losing 6-2 to the Penguins, who somehow look like they're going to make the playoffs, which is crazy considering the sell-off they've embarked on, what the composition of that roster is, how mediocre good chunks of it are, but the seasons they're getting from Justin Brazeau and Anthony Mantha. Sidney Crosby is just immortal. He's putting up a vintage Sidney Crosby season. He's top 5 in points, in the top 15 in points, in the entire league, 21 years into the NHL. And I know I was joking a few weeks ago when I had said maybe he'll be on the Olympic team in 2030 as well. And it's not out of the question if he's still playing like this. He keeps playing into his early 40s. I mean, he's 39 and he's still one of the 20-25 best players in the world. It's truly one of the most insane. And look, I know we exist in a time of LeBron and Federer and Messi, and who am I forgetting? LeBron, Federer, Messi, and Tom Brady. That's who I was forgetting. Excuse me. When we see the greatness and the longevity of greatness, it's enticing, it's tantalizing. We ask, why can't everyone do that? And some guys, they do want to have a life. And look, Tom doesn't. If it were up to Tom Brady, even at 49, he'd still be playing quarterback for someone. He would suit up for the Raiders if the league would let him. I imagine if Federer's knees still worked, he'd be in the Australian Open right now. LeBron, we are seeing it now at this point. He's really only giving you help at the offensive end of the court. His defense is pretty much non-existent, but he's got to be strategic with his energy. And we've talked about that quite a bit on What's a Basketball Show. But anytime a former player comes back, I think it's important on an institutional basis to give them some kudos. And I understand how things ended in Edmonton for Stuart Skinner was weird. It was awkward. This is a guy who was thrust into a starting role well before he was ready. His amateur track record was not nearly substantial enough as it could be. Anytime a player leaves under less than ideal circumstances, there are 2 ways to go about it. As long as we're not talking about anything criminal or immoral, we're just talking about a player who is volatile in his performance up and down, it's important that you show respect. And I'm telling you, as someone who supports the New York Rangers, how it looks that the Rangers don't do this, that they don't do videos, that they have still graphics, that they get it 2 or 3 guys at once. When they played Seattle a couple of weeks ago, they lumped Lindgren and Kakko together. It strikes me as petty. It strikes me as immature. And the Oilers, that was a really nice video. I appreciate Sportsnet keeping with the on feed, showing the video tribute on TV, because that matters. You want to build that type of institutional connection. And I think about it a lot in terms of legacy and passing things on, because for all of the complaints about Skinner, for all of the Brett Kulak mistakes in the Stanley Cup final the last 2 years, those guys were part of your team. And I really struggled with this at times, especially when it comes to the Oilers, because they've come so close, because they've gone to the final 2 years in a row, and they've lost in extremely heartbreaking fashion both times, where it becomes a zero-sum game. If we don't win, it doesn't matter, and we can't live life like that. It becomes draining. You lose what makes sports special, what makes sports romantic, that anybody in theory can do this, that anybody can chase their dream. And Stu's a local kid. He probably grew up dreaming of this opportunity. And before he knew it, he was thrust into the spotlight because Jack Campbell was so middling those 3 years ago now. He was an all-star. He won 41 games as a rookie. And he thought, oh my God, I see the rest of my life in front of me, and I'm going to be the goalie for the rest of the Connor McDavid era. And then the last 2 years have gone the way they have, where he is clearly overmatched. And look, when it comes to goalies, we know they are fickle. They are impossible to predict. You put a player in a different environment and you might get better results. And look, right now, at least at 5-on-5, the Penguins are a better hockey team. The Penguins have a better 5-on-5 goal share. They create a lot of offense. They don't spend a lot of time in their own zone. They understand their roster's limitations. And with less of a workload, Skinner's put up solid numbers. A 902 save and 2.34 goals against. They're not world beating, but they're pretty good. Those will play. If you're in a tandem, and look, Shilov's got the start tonight for Pittsburgh, but Skinner has been passable for them. And that was never the question. The question was, could he avoid the floor falling out from under him? Could he get rid of the holes, the blunders? And ultimately, Stan Bowman made a decision. And look, we know the Oilers checked in on trying to make this trade happen earlier in the summer, that if you had a mulligan, you maybe would have even did it last year when the Penguins put him on waivers just to get him in your building, and then you could figure out how to manage the goalie situation from there. But now, as you sit here, and look, I saw the jokes. I was on Reddit. I was on Twitter. I was in the Discord server. Everybody wants to make fun of the Oilers for trading for effectively older and more expensive Stuart Skinner in Tristan Jarry. But at the same time, everybody knew Skinner couldn't go on. It was untenable. How much of October and November was me coming on this show and saying they can't keep running this goalie out there? They are not serious. Him and Pickard at one point in mid-November had an 871 save percentage in all situations combined. This is like 1980 caliber goaltending. And this is 2026. And I didn't think Tristan Jarry was terrible tonight. I wish he could have had the Sid redirect. I think he probably could make a better play on the Mantha breakaway as opposed to the Mantha redirect, though I should say the one-touch pass he got that ultimately went in. But look, we know this, and it is going to continue to be the case. The Oilers are not a team that can win on its goaltending. If the game is going to come down to what Tristan Jarry or Connor Ingram or Calvin Pickard do, the Oilers are probably going to lose. And with the even strength issues, what they are this year, where the Oilers are fundamentally a poor 5-on-5 team, they're going to have a hard time winning with anything less than good goaltending. And the calculus of this team has fundamentally changed now. Last year, they were getting away with an 890 save percentage and still winning games because the even strength goals were still there. And the power play wasn't as good, sure. The power play, they were 12th or 11th in the regular season last year. This year, they're first. But the step back at even strength has really had a trickle-down effect through all facets of this team. And right now, it's really tricky to see how the Oilers make this roster better without going out there and getting someone to add to their top six and hopefully kicking Ryan Nugent-Hopkins down to center. That was far and away the weakest line tonight at even strength, the one that had Frederick at center, at least to start. And the Oilers got work to do. Washington's coming in on Saturday. Washington's in the midst of a terrible funk. They had lost to Vancouver at the end of the night. Vancouver, who had lost 11 in a row before beating them. Washington is an injury-laden team that looks poised to maybe make an addition or two ahead of the trade deadline and what could be Alex Ovechkin's swan song. You never know if this might be it, but I do think Ovi would say ahead of time it would be his last season. It's one game. We have spent the last 29 minutes exercising that frustration. It's one game. It's over with. Bad 37 seconds. The other 59 minutes and 20 seconds or so, we got to flush it. It's over with. It's done. You go back out there on Saturday, you forget it, you make something happen. That will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everybody that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Thank you so much to everybody who has helped make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Oilers wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. If you haven't yet, you got to check out the Everydayer Club. The link's down in the show notes. Click the link. It takes you to the sign-up page. Get access to the Everydayer Discord server. Cut it up about the Oilers. The other leagues and teams are in there too, but this is Locked On Oilers. We're going to talk about the Oilers in our channel. Get episodes of the show ad-free on your preferred podcast platform. And if you are so inclined, for your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On NHL Game Night, where the guys are breaking down every game every night until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned in June. If you are watching over on YouTube, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On YouTube channel. I will talk to you guys on Monday. I am expecting 1.5 feet of snow where I live. I don't know what the internet or the power situation is going to be like. I will do my best to be in communication ahead of time should there be any issues about getting Monday's show out to you. Everyone have a safe and fun weekend. I'll see you guys then. Until then, let's go Oilers.